I like to call these kind of stories horror whodunits.
Mm.
So they're like mysteries, and the mask was a big part of the story. Obviously, like I said, anybody could pick up this mask and walk around, and there might be other hangmen walking around the convention. Also, nothing looks suspicious about them.
A good story evokes feeling and emotion in you, and what more of a adrenaline spike do you get than being scared? And I think a lot of people are starting to figure that out, and I think that's why the audience for horror movies is starting to increase. I think people enjoy being scared at fiction instead of being scared at real life. Hi, I'm Tony Miello, co-creator of Killer Cosplay from Drawing Blood Comics. You can find me at Facebook at The Art of Tony Miello, on Instagram at Tony_Miello. You could find our book, Killer Cosplay, at Facebook, Drawing Blood Comics. And you are watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Hi, I'm John Marroquin, co-creator of Killer Cosplay, a book from Drawing Blood Comics. You can find me at John Boy's Art with a Z on Instagram and our comics on Drawing Blood Comics. You are watching and listening to me on Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We're joined today by two extremely talented individuals that are co-creators of a horror comic I have never seen before in my entire career reading comics called Killer Cosplay. I met one of these amazing creators back in 2012 at C2E2, way back when I first started the YouTube channel, Tony Miello, and of course his co-creator John Marroquin. How are you both doing today for this amazing comic called Killer Cosplay?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited. I'm real happy to be here. I know we met a long time ago, and finally I have a product worthy to actually talk about. So I'm geeked to be here. So
Love it. It's awesome. How about you, John? How's your day going?
Good, good. And I'm very glad to be here and finally be able to talk about this book. We had a lot of fun coming up with it and creating it. And I'm glad that other people are excited about it, just as me and Tony are.
Definitely. I have to ask this here. Horror comics aren't usually my wheelhouse, but I love the fact that when I read this comic, the art was beautiful, the dialogue was snappy, the kills were definitely snappy, that's for sure. And there was just so much just that entertained me from page to page here. You guys have both been in the comic circuit for a long time here. If a horror fan at a con asks, what the hell is Killer Cosplay? How do you each answer in one sentence that question?
the simple answer is, if your favorite slasher movie happened at a comic convention, that's really all you need to know about it. If you're a fan of slasher horror films, you're gonna love this book.
Well, how's the collaboration between you two? Because I read the bit of the synopsis of it. I know the comic circuit can be amazing when you're tabled next to each other, if that ever is the case here. Um, but obviously, conversations happen, like just shooting the off the cuff here. How did Killer Cosplay come about then?
Yeah, and that's pretty much exactly how it happened. Me and Tony, we traveled to all the cons together. We're actually neighbors.
Oh,
We spent a lot of time together, not only on the road, but we do a horror night once a week. So we're both huge fans of horror movies. But sometimes these shows can be a little slow, depending on what time of the day or what weekend you get lucky to catch them on. I believe it was in Pennsylvania last year that we were kind of slow, and we just started talking about what if a slasher movie happened at a horror convention, just because you have endless amounts of victims to prey upon. It just went from there. I mean, we just started spinning out ideas, and Tony wrote the thing, and Tony just, I mean, he killed it. I mean, it's just everything is just on point about the book.
Like John said, we spend a lot of time at conventions together, and we do talk about horror films quite often. And it was just one of those conversations that we had a million times. But as the conversation went on, we kind of started plotting out the story, like, oh yeah, this would happen and this would happen, and this character could be like this. And we pretty much came up with the whole story just within an hour sitting behind the table at this convention. We were looking for a project to work on together. Since we both loved horror was what it was going to be, and this was just the perfect thing.
Was there like a scene that kind of popped into your minds as you were talking, like a freeze frame in a film that said, that's the image this entire book just hangs on?
It was.
I think the name came first.
The name definitely came first, but we knew we wanted the character to be wearing a mask, and we needed to come up with a reason for the mask. And that's where we got the idea to have comic creators who created these comic books in the universe that we were writing about, and have the killer from a horror comic be the face of our killer in the story.
I think the initial idea, just like Tony said, was to have it of a book that was created. So that way, kind of like somebody could have grabbed the mask off of a rack there at the comic convention. So it could be anybody, it's not like a specially made mask. It's something that's mass produced. So, and once you got that, I like to call these kind of stories horror whodunits. So they're like mysteries, and the mask was a big part of the story, obviously. So like I said, anybody could pick up this mask and walk around, and there might be other Hangman walking around the convention also, so nothing looks suspicious about them.
We have, if you pay attention to the artwork, you can see in the background of one of the panels a hand reaching for a mask that one of the vendors has for sale.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I had to do a double take on that entire page. I'm just like, I thought I saw something in the background. I looked down and I'm just like, wait a second. Oh, that's what happened. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's subtle. Like, you don't see that often.
Yeah, I wanted to try to convey the fact that this was a premeditated plan.
And you definitely convinced that for sure. As I was reading this book, you love the characters, you love their interactions, and then the horror happened. And it's just like either out of left field, not expecting it, you turn the page, and all of a sudden it's just like you're hit with a dead body or you're hit with the action, or you're hit with like more questions than answers. And I think that's what really drove me to enjoy the entire story in itself. Was I was still trying to figure out who had actually done it at the end, and I'm still asking questions like, is my actual hypothesis correct or not? So
it was important to make the characters likable, because if you don't have any feeling for the characters, you're not going to care if they live or die. As a creator, you want people invested in the story. So that was important to us. We wanted to make sure, as we were, developing the relationship of these characters, that, the reader could identify with something about them.
And then some of them, you want to see them die. So that's the flip side to that.
Yeah, the organizer for sure. Like I'm sure that was top notch kill cam on that one there. I love that.
I think we have enough experience in the comic convention world to take little bits of people we've met and throw them in there. And probably the next book is going to be, it will be even more like a glimpse behind the curtain of convention scenes, just on the typical people you meet and the interactions between the artists and the fans. I mean, we kind of wanted to hit those points because we do have a lot of knowledge in that stuff.
That's what I was going to ask, was because you guys have been behind the table for over a decade plus for sure here. You must have seen everything from like awkward photo ops to like cosplay malfunctions, line interactions of various fans that have been around you here. Is there like 3 moments that inspired Killer Cosplay besides the concept you guys talked about?
Oh,
go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to say maybe one is when you have 20 cosplayers in front of your table and nobody can get to you, and you have this image of somebody coming and just wiping them all out.
My favorite is when people just walk up to your table and they stack their stuff on your artwork. I've had people put drinks down on top of my I'm like, what are you doing? They're, some people are just clueless.
You have like con organizers or whatever that rarely check in on you or things like that, or
Oh, well, I mean, I would say probably 90% of the big shows, once you find out where your table location is, you don't see anybody that runs the con again until maybe when you're leaving, if you're lucky.
No, I'm always curious. The horror genre gets a bad rap, whether it's in comics or media or TV and film and things like that. What's misunderstood about the horror genre that people just don't appreciate?
For the longest time, horror was seen as kind of like the gutter of entertainment. I think that the perception of horror being lowbrow is changing, especially now. You just had two major horror movies win Academy Awards, for performances. I think people are starting to see that there's a lot of value in the horror genre, not just as a moneymaker, because I think Hollywood has realized that there's a lot of money to be made in the horror genre, because these films can be produced relatively inexpensively, and they usually yield a big profit. But I think people are starting to find the entertainment value. A good story evokes feeling and emotion in you, and what more of a adrenaline spike do you get than being scared? And I think a lot of people are starting to figure that out, and I think that's why the audience for horror movies is starting to increase. I think people enjoy being scared at fiction instead of being scared at real life.
Yeah, and just like Tony hit on earlier, you really have to have good storytelling to be able to pull these things off. Basically, that's what a good horror story, comic, movie, whatever, essentially comes down to. If you don't have good storytelling and you don't care about the characters, then the movie doesn't work, or the book or the comic. It's good storytelling.
That's interesting because the medium of film is so easy to portray what you actually need to, but when you're in a comic, you're locked into set amount of pages, you're locked into either a color scheme or whatever. Is there something with John that you absolutely wanted to include in this book that may be considered a horror trope from TV and film that you just refused to cut?
We co-created it, Tony wrote it, and then we had another artist draw it for us, just because we're so time consumed.
Sure.
I'm actually right now working on the Hangman origin book.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, this whole thing is one big universe. Just because the idea was fresh on top of our heads, and we were like, instead of clearing our schedules, let's just get someone to do it. And glad we did, because it would have came out in 2 years if I tried to do it or Tony tried to do it.
That's true. Who was the artist then?
The artist, he's from overseas. The artist's name is Daniel Manuel. I found him on Facebook, of all places. I was really impressed with how he laid out his pages, and I'm glad he didn't follow my page direction exactly. He added a much more cinematic element to how he laid out the panels, and I think it really added something to the story. He really brought a lot. He did all the line work and the coloring, and I think he really did a good job conveying a mood and setting the tone for the story.
This is more geared towards the art that you received then. Was there an art piece you got back from Daniel that was way better than what was in the script?
There were some things he did. He, like I said, he had this eye for giving the art a cinematic aspect. And so, like in my head, when I'm writing any story, I'm always picturing it as live action. And so I try to convey the action as I see it play out in my imagination that way. And he changed things, not everything. He changed certain things with the storytelling that made it so much better. And I can't think of any one example other than, what he did do a couple of times? He changed the kills, the perspective of the kill, the angle. He did it twice. He changed the angle of how the kill was presented. And I think it made it much more dramatic than what I had originally written.
There was some interesting angles that I did notice there, whether it was the eye level shot in the washroom to to definitely the reverse angle of that scene that you guys talked about in the short there. It was definitely an interesting thing I had never thought of. Like even watching Jason versus Freddy or things like that, it was just like you would never see that in that film, even though it's perfectly acceptable in those types of films, I would think. But this comic, I think, really pushed the horror tropes and it pushed great storytelling and very interesting characters from the start. Although I still never understand why people decide to split up in a horror film. That still gets me after all this time. So.
That's something I'll never understand. But like, I tried to give people a reason why they were leaving instead of just, I'll go this way and you go that way. You know, I wanted to give them a reason why they would leave an area when they knew there was danger around.
Yeah, and if we kill them all at once, it's going to be a short book.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean this is 5 pages? I mean...
Yeah. The end.
But nothing's really the end in horror films or in horror comics for that matter. I mean, you've set yourself up for sequels and you're building a larger world. I think that's really impressive in itself here. You guys have watched a lot of horror films. Do you see this? Could this be a live action adaptation in some way, shape, or form?
100%.
Okay.
100%. By setting it at a comic convention, no one's ever done that before. So that in itself is something new. And I think it lends itself to, a whole variety of different possibilities. We had, I think our masked killer is kind of cool looking. You know, the fact that he's masked, you never know who's under there. I think a lot can be done with this. I mean, we're planning a lot right now as we're writing the second volume. And I think what we have planned beyond the second volume is something else that's never been done before in horror. And once we get there, I think people are going to be very excited about that, but that's still to come.
Jeez.
That was one of the reasons why we also got another artist to do this book, is because we're planning ahead other things that need our attention. So the hard work was done when Tony wrote the thing. So you can just ship it out to, a great artist. After that, it's back to work on, what's next.
Then when you're collaborating with this and when you were getting the art, etc., did you clash on how far is too far, whether it's the kill, a joke about the fandom, the level of gore? Like, how did you decide who wins without, standing off against each other?
Tony wrote it. I mean, we collaborated and we came up with all the ideas, but once Tony wrote it, I mean, that was it. It was set in stone.
Nice. We
don't really disagree on too much. We kind of got a lot of the same taste. I trust Tony with whatever he does. I mean, if I got to throw something in there, it's a little, maybe this or maybe that. And then, but usually Tony is like, can explain, well, no, I did it because of this. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not as smart as you. That's why I'm not a good writer. Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, once Tony showed me how he fleshed it all out, I mean, there was nothing else to be said about it. And, some of the stuff in the book, it wasn't us pushing it. I mean, there's a scene where one of the vendors is going off on some of the customers, and that's a real thing that happens with one of the guys we know. We know that. So we're not. Some of this stuff is absolutely true. Besides the kills, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you get VIP passes a little easier, so that's a bonus, I guess. But
yeah,
because you guys have watched so much horror in your lifetime here, is there like 5 films or series that you would give to a newbie when it comes to who wants to approach the horror scene? Whether it's films or comics, I would say.
Oh, well, as far as films, I mean, Halloween, you got to go with the first Halloween. I mean, it's a masterpiece. I think Nightmare on Elm Street is right up there. As far as atmosphere, you got to go with some classics like Frankenstein or Dracula. Then you want to get a little twisted. You got to go with some of that Japanese stuff like The Audition, which I think is just a masterclass on giving a left turn to the audience. Where, the first time I watched that movie, I had to stop it twice to make sure I was watching the right movie, because it didn't seem like this was a horror film at all. And then all of a sudden, it just, in the third act, with maybe 20 minutes left in the movie, it takes this complete left turn, and you see some of the most gruesome visuals you ever could imagine. And it was just beautiful.
I mean, as far as horror movies go, I tend to like a lot of the fun stuff. Like Fright Night's probably one of my favorite movies. I think it goes back to just great storytelling. You don't have to be a horror fan to like a lot of these movies. Just like the Scream franchise, it's a lot of fun. Maybe some of the endings don't live up to expectations, but they're all fun. Like Tony says, they're cheeseburgers. Everybody likes cheeseburgers. I think that's what we try to do with this book is just have fun. And we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just adding some cool stuff to it, and hopefully it works out where the ending is fulfillment to you and doesn't drop it at the end. I think this book doesn't do that.
Is there like a recent horror film or show or comic where you think they nailed this one thing we're chasing in Killer Cosplay? And then is there one thing where you would say, if we ever do that, we failed?
I tend not to look at stories like that. I look at them as they're presented. And, I always think there's a reason why the writers or the creators did it the way they did it. I think if it misses, they took their shot, they took their swing, and it didn't land the way they wanted it to. Or maybe they had something else in mind. They intended it a different way, and the director interpreted it different than how the writer perceived it. So I try to judge each thing on its own merits. And yeah, there are times I'll see a movie or read a story and think, well, that it kind of missed the mark, but I'm not trying to copy any other thing. So I try not to compare what I do to other stuff. I think once you start comparing what you're doing to other things, you're going to drive yourself crazy because you're going to worry about, well, is this too similar to this, or was this already done? Or every story's been told. You just got to find new ways to tell it, and you got to find interesting details to put in and make it exciting and fun. And I think that's what we did. We took slasher genre has been around for, decades. We just wanted to have fun with it. We love it. We wanted to do our own take. And we had a blast doing this book, and I think people are going to have a lot of fun reading it. And I think, that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Tony. I tend to, when I read or watch things, I can always pull some good stuff out of it. And I also know at the end of the day, there is, one person behind these things that had the idea. And like Tony said, sometimes it doesn't come off right. But a lot of times we watch these movies and at the end we're like, they could have shaved off 20 minutes or, this or that. But there's always something cool you can pull from it as far as just somebody's ideas and appreciating them for what they are. But yeah, I don't really compare what I do either to anything else. The only thing I can say is by watching all these or reading this stuff, if it doesn't hit with me, then you kind of watch out when you're doing your own stuff and be like, okay, did this hit with me? And at the end of the day, we're making this stuff for us. Me and Tony, we love this kind of stuff. So it's probably good that we have each other to bounce off of, because we can say, oh, this is cool. If we both think it's cool right off the rip, then it's a win, because this is the stuff we love. And we're not going to lie about our own stuff. So if it's not hitting, one of us is going to tell each other, well, this doesn't look right, or this didn't go right. But like I said, with the first script, as soon as, I don't know if Tony had a lot of bottled up storytelling in him, he couldn't get out for a while, because it seemed like he knocked it out the park as soon as he got the idea. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, we're having a lot of fun with this, and hopefully it goes on for a while. But I think people will enjoy it, and they will enjoy what's coming after.
Well, I definitely know I enjoyed it. I think that people that are reading this are going to enjoy it. Like, there was not a single page or a single dialogue that either cringy or anything like that. It flowed smoothly. Like, I love the character interactions here. Speaking of the characters, though, is there a character in Killer Cosplay that is secretly the closest to who you are at a convention?
No, not for me. I'm not a very outgoing person, so none of these characters are anything like me. They're very social. But yeah, the only character that is is like a real person. He's one of the first people to be killed. We kind of based the character a little on a buddy of ours, and we told him we're gonna stick you in this book, and he's like, all right, and he was all excited about it. So we're looking forward to him seeing what we did to him.
Yeah, and maybe as you know, in the future, I think a lot of their characters won't be based on one person, but just a mashup of people we've met, you know, through the years. A little bit of us, a little bit of that.
We've run into so many different people through the years at these conventions that, you know, different aspects of people's personalities or just how they act kind of stick with you. As a writer, I try to draw off of real life, like, you know, just about every other writer. You take elements from different people you've come across and you kind of mix them together to create a character to fit your needs. So there'll probably be aspects of people who, you know, we've run across at cons that we want to use so we can, you know, create one character that kind of hits a lot of stereotypes of certain, you know, con goers or con vendors or whatever. But it's usually an amalgam of 4 or 5 different people.
Well, if you need a podcaster to kill, you know, I'll take it. Why did he die? He's Canadian. Oh, I get it. Okay. The one thing I noticed about this is you're at a horror comic convention. You're presenting comic books. One of the big things was the Extinction event, as well as the Hangman comics that were mentioned throughout the book here. Are they going to be part of like actual publications? Because I think, John, you mentioned something like that. You were making the Hangman story originally there. Like, talk to us about those comics. Like, that seems like an amazing addition to the world you're creating.
Right off the rip, I mean, that's why, like I said before, we found another artist to do the actual book. We have a universe planned, and it just came naturally. It wasn't like something that was forced. We just said it'd be cool to have a book of the origin of Hangman, which is Curse of the Hangman. Because we're at a comic book convention, we have a lot of books that we can throw at the convention that can be intertwined into the universe. So there's another book also, Extinction event, which is at the con too, which plays into the Killer Cosplay book. We thought it would be cool that if you read the Killer Cosplay book, you would see these other books in that universe and then could actually get them in physical form through the comic book conventions when you see us there.
Is that going to be part of the Kickstarter campaign as well, or are those like separate projects that you're going to do?
Yeah, we're planning right now as stretch goals for the Kickstarter. You'll be able to get digital copies of issue 1 of Curse of the Hangman and issue 1 of Extinction event, you know, as stretch goals for the Killer Cosplay Kickstarter. So those both those books are being produced right now. You know, eventually they'll be full graphic novels. So, you know, we're really excited about that because, you know, we had Curse of the Hangman. We wanted to come up with this, you know, the character. We needed a character to, you know, to have this mass killer. And so we created this whole backstory for the character of the Hangman. And, you know, we decided to turn that into a comic. And then we needed a comic book for our lead character, his property in the book. And this was a story idea I had some years ago. And so I decided to hand it off to my son, actually, Nick Miello. He's writing that story right now. That has phenomenal artwork. An artist named Logan Bennett is doing the artwork for that book, and it's absolutely incredible. He really is good. I have issue 1. It's going to be available to readers as a stretch goal for free.
Wow. That's amazing. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Because Kickstarters are a marathon, not a sprint. They're obviously a long, involved process when it comes to doing this, and you guys are no strangers to Kickstarter campaigns here. What are some promotional events or items other than what you just mentioned here that you're excited to get into readers' hands or new to horror fans, comic reader hands?
One of the things we're really excited about is we're going to have a convention exclusive cover for the book. and it's done by Jason Moore, who is just a horror comics icon. And it's bloody and brutal, and I absolutely loved it. What we're doing is we're going to be handing out at all our convention appearances. We'll have cards with a QR code, and if you use that QR code, you'll have access to a secret tier on the Kickstarter, so you can get just that cover. Once the book is printed, we'll have that cover whenever we do book signings or comic conventions. And if you don't get it through the Kickstarter, the only way to get it will be if you come and see us live.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, are digital posters a thing, wallpapers, things like that for the mobile phone? Like, are we going that route as well too?
I'm not a big fan of digital only media.
Sure.
I'm a very physical person. I like physical comic books. We do have a digital option for the book, and I did that. I know there are people who prefer that, so I wanted to have that option for them because I didn't want to exclude them.
Of course.
But I would much prefer people get physical copies of media. I don't believe in solely digital anything. I still buy DVDs, I still buy CDs, I still buy actual books. I don't download anything. It's just not who I am. I don't believe in it.
100% agree.
Yeah, our tiers are filled with physical things, and this is just the first book, but we do have a cool one of the covers that was done by Dave Acosta, who's another awesome artist. He knocked it out the park with the cover he did was with a lanyard on it, and we do have a tier where you can get a lanyard on the Kickstarter.
There's so much to read in this. This is a good sized book, like I've previously mentioned. Like the color choices, I love the character interactions, the writing is top notch, and this is going to be one of those series and worlds and universes that you're going to come back to no matter if you're a fan of it or not, because it just has something that I think a lot of comics these days just lack. It has a different feel to it, and I like it.
Thank you. We're happy that you enjoyed it. We hope everybody enjoys it as much as you did, because we really enjoyed it and we really want to do more. And we think that this is something that is going to have legs and could be around for a while.
All you guys have to do is make it up to Toronto, and I'll probably see it there one of these days.
Awesome. We're going to shoot for it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll take the train up and spend a day with you guys there. Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Well, I think the reason that I'm passionate about comic books probably spawns from when I was a little kid going to visit my grandmother on the weekends, and my uncle was there, and there was a little corner store that used to sell comic books without covers. I don't know if you remember those. Be $5 in a bag. And I remember grabbing some. I mean, I had to be 7, 8 years old, and went back to my grandmother's house, and my uncle immediately took out one of the comics and drew something from it. And those weren't my first comic books, but it was the first time that I actually saw that somebody actually could do this. Like, at that time you think everything's magic, but when I saw him actually draw something from the comic, it inspired me to try to do it myself, and that put me on the journey to where I am here. Just my love for comics.
I think my grandfather, he bought me my first comic book when I was little, Spider-Man comic, and I just read that over and over and over again. And when I told him that I wanted to draw comic books, I remember him, we lived in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn at the time, and he took me on the subway and we went into Manhattan, and I remember us going to 4 different bookstores to find how to draw comics the Marvel way, and he bought that for me so I could practice drawing from that book. And I think that's one of my earliest inspirations as far as somebody motivating me to get into this.
From a professional standpoint, you are both been extremely successful in the entertainment industry, and from the form of comics and art and writing and everything along that line. And I see many years of success, not only with Killer Cosplay, but whatever other projects you decide to create in the future that have yet to materialize. From a professional standpoint, you're both successful. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
I always consider the best job I ever had was being a dad. I was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home dad, so I got to spend every day with my son, and I really got to watch him grow up. And I think that's my biggest success, just being a father, and I hope I was a good one. You never know; you're always filled with self-doubt, but that that was my success, being able to raise an independent kid who he's on his own, and he's able to take care of himself. And I guess every parent wants that. They want their kid to be able to you know go out on their own, and as much as it breaks your heart when they leave, it's the job you were setting out to do. So
Yeah, I consider myself, I'm alive, so that's a little bit of success. I get to travel around with Tony and create funny books and draw, and it does fulfill a big part of myself. Gives me a lot of fulfillment and happiness. So in those regards, yeah, I am. I do consider myself successful.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
failure is I don't look at quote unquote failure in the comic industry or making art as failure. I think of it as a stepping stone. Every time you do something, you've succeeded in moving forward. Whether it's whether you it didn't get the outcome that you wanted, you still did it, and that is the success in itself. Making art is never a failure. Maybe you make a book and it doesn't sell. Maybe I create characters that people don't like, but I still did it. And there's a lot of people out there that talk about doing these things and never do it. I think the winning is in the doing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Just creating and putting it out there is pretty much most of it. But failing is, as corny as it sounds, is usually uh, a chance to fix something. When you fail, you get to fix it. So then you get to ask questions of what went wrong, what do I do better? And in this business, I I'm an artist, I'm a creator, so a lot of the stories I create myself. I'm not too much of a writer, but so I'm talking in an art aspect. If you ask anybody, 10 people, who's your favorite artist, they're all going to give you a different name. So it's subjective. You can't feel too bad if people don't like your work, because there's always going to be somebody who does. So as long as one person likes what you're doing, um, it keeps you going. And so you can't just you know focus on the failures. You just got to keep going.
The younger generation is looking at your works and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way, whether it's as a writer or an artist, or maybe create a story that they've had in their head for years, and now you finally inspired them on that path. How can that younger generation inspire the generation that follows them?
I think just by doing, the same. It's the same formula for everyone. um, do what you love, and when you find people who connect with you, then um, you can inspire them. You just We have a lot of people that stop at our tables and they ask questions, and we always answer them, and we give them good information, because we want this industry to thrive. I mean, we want it to stick around forever. We've been through it in its highs and lows, and I think we're kind of at a resurgence right now with comic books. As far as from an art form, it seems like it hasn't probably been a better time for it art wise, and storytelling wise, there's so much good stuff out there. So yeah, I would say, you just do the work, and you'll inspire somebody, and they'll do the work and they'll inspire somebody, and it goes on and on.
I would say the best advice I can give to the next generation is share your knowledge. Successful people are never greedy with uh, with information or advice. They help others, and you give what you get, or you get what you give. I used to teach art to and comic creating to little kids, grade school kids, and you could see the ones who got who got it and were inspired by it. And I think that feeling is something people should strive for. And I don't think, if you're in this business, and you have the opportunity to offer advice to an up and coming creator, you do it. You share your knowledge, you share your experiences, you offer tips, and because it's what you would want if you were in their shoes. And I think, I have a buddy. He always says in the comic industry, we're going to rise and fall together. And I have wholeheartedly believed that since I heard him say it. And I think, we need to work together. This industry we're strong as creators when the industry's strong. And I think, if the creators work together, we can keep the industry strong. And that's pretty much it.
Nice. Good stuff. All right. Last question is this before we wrap up and ask where we can find you and how we can support you and all that fun stuff here is, if your life was a comic book, what would its title be? And what would its soundtrack be?
If my life was a comic book, the title would be You Should Have Chose Door Number 2. And the soundtrack would probably be the theme from Benny Hill.
Okay. Yeah. You're like the third person that has said that particular soundtrack in 18 years doing this. So
it's probably kind of corny, but I got to say, my life, just because I've had a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups, but I would consider my comic would be titled after a great quote from Rocky. It's not how many times you get knocked. What is it?
it's not how many times.
It's not how hard you get hit.
How hard?
It's how hard you can, or it's not how hard you hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
No, that's not the one I was looking for. The
Oh.
older movie was. It's not how many times you fall down, or what is it?
Yeah, it's not how many times you fall down. It's how many times you get up.
Yeah, pretty much that, because I just feel like life is just figuring out what went wrong and keep going. And it would definitely be a heavy metal soundtrack.
Well, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you both, John and Tony, for being on the show. It's a pleasure having you both on.
Thanks for having us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
For those that want to support Killer Cosplay and your own personal works, where can they find you? How can they support you? And anything else you guys would like to promote? And of course, when is the Kickstarter campaign?
The Kickstarter is going to launch on March 24th, this coming Tuesday. You can find it by searching Killer Cosplay graphic novel on Kickstarter, or you can go to killercosplay.com, and there is a link right there for the Kickstarter. It's the only thing on the page. Just hit that and it'll bring you right to it. If you go there now before the launch, you could get notified of when it launches. And first day, we have a special tier for the first day supporters. You'll get the book, and you'll get the free lanyard that John had mentioned. And that lanyard, if you wear it to conventions that we're at, or book signings that we're at, you get a discount on commissions and books and also whatever we got. So
I said it's a once in a lifetime chance to get that lanyard, and it's good for life, or until our hands fall off.
You could find me at facebook.com/The Art of Tony Miello, Find me on Instagram at Tony_Miello. Follow Rocketing Studios. Follow Drawing Blood Comics on Facebook.
Drawing Blood Comics and Rocketing Studios. Other than that, it's my Instagram page, which is John Boy's Art with a Z.
All right, well, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview, and in fact, I think you can find Tony's past interview from back in 2012 on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. The podcast you can find at Two Geeks Talking, that's TWO Geeks Talking, wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.